The Crithian battlegroup materialized at the edge of Earth's solar system with the precision of a surgical strike. Fleet Commander Veskrath watched the blue-green world rotate on his tactical display, third planet from an unremarkable yellow star, and allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Intelligence reported minimal orbital defenses, scattered colonies across the inner planets, and a species that had only achieved interstellar travel within the last century. This would be swift. Admiral Chen, we're tracking multiple hyperspace signatures at the heliopause, Lieutenant Okonkwo's voice carried across the command center beneath Cheyenne Mountain. Preliminary count puts them at 217 vessels. Dreadnought class or larger. Admiral Sarah Chen didn't look up from her terminal. Expected arrival time at Earth orbit? 72 hours at current velocity. Plenty of time. Chen's fingers moved across her interface, triggering protocols that had waited 43 years to activate. Bring all stations to Condition 1. Activate the welcome package. Veskrath's communication officer hissed in surprise. Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the target world. Audio only. Play it. The human voice that filled the bridge was unnaturally calm. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of Earth Defense Command. Your fleet has entered sovereign human territory. You have one opportunity to withdraw. This is your only warning. Scattered laughter rippled through the Crithian bridge crew. Veskrath silenced them with a gesture before activating his own transmission. I am Fleet Commander Veskrath of the Crithian Dominion. Your world will submit to Galactic Council authority. Power down your defensive installations and prepare for occupation. Resistance will be met with overwhelming force. Silence answered him. Then Chen's voice returned, carrying what almost sounded like amusement. Noted. Please proceed. Their response is tactically nonsensical, Veskrath's tactical officer observed. No negotiation, no appeal to council law, no surrender. Just acknowledgement. Primitives clinging to irrational pride, Veskrath dismissed. Advance the fleet. Standard occupation formation. Across the solar system, humanity's true response began to unfold. Not in words, but in steel and silence. The Crithian vanguard reached Mars orbit 40 hours into their approach. Sensors detected the mining colonies scattered across the rust-red surface, the orbital processing stations, the cargo haulers moving between the planet and the asteroid belt. Standard colonial infrastructure for a developing species. Then the mining stations opened fire. Defensive batteries on the fourth planet. The tactical officer's voice cracked with surprise. Kinetic accelerators, firing solution indicates, contact. Forward destroyer screen taking hits. Veskrath watched 3 destroyer icons flicker and die on his display. Impossible. Mining colonies didn't carry military-grade weapons. Damage assessment. Penetrated shields completely. Projectile velocity exceeds 0.3 light speed. These aren't defensive weapons, Commander. They're mass drivers designed to launch or containers. Then why did they penetrate our shields? Because they're not firing coherent energy. Just solid tungsten slugs. Our shields are optimized against particle beams and plasma torpedoes, not. The officer paused, recalculating. Not 50-ton projectiles moving at relativistic speeds. Veskrath's scales bristled. Primitive kinetics shouldn't threaten Council warships. The energy requirements alone should have prevented such acceleration. Unless the humans had been building these accelerators for purposes beyond simple mining. Unless they'd been preparing. Return fire. Reduce those installations to rubble. Plasma lances reached out from the Crithian fleet, converging on the Mars orbital stations. Explosions blossomed in the black, debris cascading through the thin atmosphere. But more mass driver rounds continued to launch, each one targeted with disturbing precision. On Earth, Chen watched the engagement through the data streaming from deep space monitoring networks. Mars batteries are performing above projections. Estimated enemy casualties? 7 destroyers confirmed destroyed, 4 heavy cruisers showing critical damage. The stations are taking losses, but they're buying us time. Okonkwo pulled up a tactical overview. Krithian main fleet is reforming. They've stopped treating this as a simple occupation. Good. Major Reeves, status on Luna? All batteries charged and waiting. We've got firing solutions on everything in their fleet. The weapons officer's Texas drawl carried grim satisfaction. When they get in range, we'll light them up like the 4th of July. Chen allowed herself a thin smile. The Krithians had numbers and technology. Humanity had preparation and creativity. 43 years ago, when the Galactic Council's first probe entered Sol system, Earth's governments had seen the writing in the stars. Other species out there. Advanced species. Species that might not view humanity as equals. So they'd prepared. Not with Council technology, which would take centuries to reverse engineer. But with human ingenuity applied to human physics. Mass drivers that could launch mining containers could launch tungsten penetrators. Fusion reactors designed for power generation could pump experimental lasers. Industrial fabrication systems could build thousands of autonomous defense platforms. Nuclear weapons, forbidden by Council law but never surrendered, waited in hardened silos and stealth satellites. The Krithian fleet reached Luna's orbit 68 hours into their approach. Veskrath had reorganized his formation, screening his capital ships behind overlapping point defense fields. His tactical display showed Earth's moon, barren, lifeless, marked by human settlements in the Maria and Crater regions. Mining operations again. Processing facilities. Nothing that suggested military infrastructure. All ships, assume bombardment formation. Target the lunar installations first. I want those mass drivers eliminated before we approach the primary world. The moon's surface erupted with light. Not from human weapons firing, but from hatches opening. Hundreds of hatches, scattered across the lunar surface, each one revealing launch tubes aimed at the approaching fleet. Missiles streaked upward from the low-gravity environment, accelerating hard on fusion drives. Missile launch. Multiple launch. Tracking over 400 inbound, over 1,000 inbound, the tactical officer's voice rose to a panicked keen. They've weaponized the entire moon. Point defense systems engaged, filling space with interceptor fire. Krithian beam weapons slashed through the missile swarm, detonating dozens, then hundreds. But there were too many, launching from too many dispersed sites. And as the first wave closed to terminal range, Veskrath realized the final horror. Those are fusion warheads, his science officer whispered. Primitive fission fusion devices, but in 100 megaton yields. Council protocols banned nuclear weapons 3,000 years ago. These primitives never signed Council protocols, Veskrath snarled. All ships, evasive. The first warheads detonated in a chain reaction of artificial stars. Electromagnetic pulses washed across the fleet, disrupting sensors and communication. When Veskrath's display cleared, 11 ships had vanished, and twice that number showed critical damage. The remaining missiles continued their approach, automated guidance systems immune to jamming, each one carrying enough destructive power to crack a mountain. Through the static and chaos, a transmission reached the Krithian flagship. Admiral Chen's voice, still preternaturally calm. You were warned, Fleet Commander. This is Earth. We've survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, supervolcanoes, and 2 world wars. We've weaponized everything from rocks to atoms. Did you really think we'd face our first alien contact unprepared? Veskrath's claws gouged marks in his command chair. All ships, maximum acceleration. We close with the planet immediately. Once we achieve low orbit, they won't dare use nuclear weapons against us. Commander, our casualty rate. I am aware of our casualties. The fleet advances. Chen watched the Krithian formation adjust, damaged ships falling back while the remaining capital vessels pushed forward with reckless speed. Exactly as predicted. They're committed. Major Reeves, prepare Earth's primary defense network. Stations Alamo, Thermopylae, and Stalingrad are armed and tracking. We've got 3,000 autonomous platforms in position. They want to reach Earth orbit? Reeves checked his displays. Let's show them what that costs. Okonkwo pulled up long-range scans. Admiral, I'm detecting power spikes across their remaining dreadnoughts. Looks like they're charging planetary bombardment weapons. They're going to try to break us from orbit. Chen's expression hardened. How very conventional of them. Lieutenant, open a channel to all defense stations, all militias, all reserves. It's time they learned what makes Earth special. The channel activated across every military frequency, every defense network, every armed vessel from Mercury to the Kuiper Belt. Chen's voice carried to millions of defenders, soldiers and civilians who trained their entire lives for this moment. All forces, this is Admiral Chen. The enemy is advancing on Earth with intent to bombard. They believe superior numbers and technology guarantee victory. They're about to learn why every species in the galaxy fears death worlds. She paused, watching the Krithian fleet accelerate toward humanity's cradle. 43 years ago, we detected their first transmissions. We've spent every day since preparing for this. They thought they were facing primitives. Let's show them what humans do when we have time to prepare. All stations, weapons free. Make them regret leaving their homeworld. Vescratha's fleet crossed into Earth's orbital zone with 143 warships remaining. Against them waited orbital fortresses with names like Bastogne, Rorke's Drift, and Masada. 3,000 autonomous weapons platforms drifted in carefully calculated positions. Missile batteries on the surface, mass drivers on the moon, and fusion-pumped lasers powered by reactors built under the pretense of solving humanity's energy crisis. The Krithian commander watched Earth grow larger on his displays, its blue oceans and white clouds almost peaceful. Orbital defenses began to resolve on his sensors. Numbers that made his blood chill. How many defensive installations do they have? Tactical is still counting, Commander. Preliminary estimates suggest. The Earth orbit defenses opened fire simultaneously, and Vescratha's world became screaming chaos and light. The orbital fortresses fired in perfect synchronization, and the Krithian vanguard simply ceased to exist. 3,000 autonomous platforms unleashed concentrated hellfire. Mark 7 railguns accelerated tungsten penetrators to velocities that shattered shields like glass. Fusion-pumped X-ray lasers, each powered by a small thermonuclear detonation, carved through armor plating designed to withstand conventional weapons. Missile swarms launched from Earth's surface, their trajectories calculated by quantum processors that had been mapping enemy formations since the fleet entered the solar system. Vescrath watched 23 capital ships disappear from his tactical display in the first 90 seconds. Evasive maneuvers. Scatter formation. But there was nowhere to scatter. The human defensive grid had been positioned with mathematical precision, creating overlapping fields of fire that covered every approach vector. Each platform operated independently, adapting to Krithian countermeasures in real time, learning from every engagement. Where Council doctrine relied on centralized command vulnerable to decapitation strikes, humanity had built a distributed network that grew more effective as individual nodes shared combat data. They're using autonomous weapons, Vescratha's tactical officer reported, her voice tight with disbelief. AI-guided systems. Council law forbids. They don't follow Council law. Vescrath slammed a foreclaw against his console. Focus all fire on the largest fortresses. If we can eliminate their command nodes. Every fortress opened fire simultaneously, proving there were no command nodes to eliminate. Inside Orbital Defense Station Thermopylae, Commander Jackson Park watched his tactical board light up with target locks. His crew of 47 managed 16 different weapon systems, but most of the fighting happened through automated processes too fast for organic reaction times. His job wasn't to aim and fire. It was to select priorities and unleash hell. Tracking systems have target saturation, his weapons officer reported. We've got more locks than ordnance. Then make every shot count, Park replied. Target their carriers first. Kill their fighter screens, and their capital ships are naked. Thermopylae's main railgun spoke, a precisely timed magnetic acceleration that sent a 2-ton slug downrange at 0.4 light speed. The projectile crossed 40,000 kilometers in half a second and punched clean through a Crythian assault carrier, the kinetic energy vaporizing the vessel's reactor and triggering a secondary explosion that crippled 2 adjacent destroyers. Splash 1 carrier, the weapons officer announced. Recharge time 90 seconds. We won't need 90 seconds. Park highlighted a cluster of Crythian cruisers attempting to flank the defensive grid. All platforms in Sector 7, concentrate fire. Let's show them why Earth builds redundancy into everything. The autonomous platforms responded instantly, 200 weapon systems focusing on 12 enemy ships. The cruisers lasted 8 seconds. Back on Vescratha's flagship, alarms screamed across every console. His fleet had been reduced to 91 functional warships, and they hadn't even engaged the primary defensive line. The orbital fortresses alone were dismantling his forces with casual efficiency. Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the human admiral. Chen's face appeared on the view screen, her expression calm despite the ongoing slaughter. Fleet Commander Vescrath, you've now lost approximately 60% of your forces. I'm offering you one final opportunity to withdraw. Retreat beyond the heliopause, and we'll cease fire. Vescratha's scales flushed with humiliation and rage. Your weapons may be more effective than anticipated, but you cannot sustain this. Our shields are adapting. Our remaining vessels represent more firepower than your entire species possesses. Actually, you've only seen our fixed defenses. Chen gestured off-screen. You haven't met our mobile fleet yet. New contacts blazed across Vescratha's tactical display. Ships emerging from concealment among the asteroid belt, from lunar orbit, from positions distributed throughout Earth's orbital space. Not the converted freighters and mining vessels he'd expected, but purpose-built warships. Smaller than Crythian dreadnoughts, but there were hundreds of them, and they moved with predatory speed. All vessels, engage the human fleet, Vescrath commanded. Show these primitives what real warships can accomplish. The first human destroyer reached weapons range and opened fire with every system simultaneously. Missiles, railguns, particle beams, and something Vescrath had never encountered. Magnetic confinement fields that deployed like nets, snaring smaller Crythian vessels and dragging them into point-blank engagement ranges where superior shields couldn't compensate for human firepower. Lieutenant Okonkwo coordinated the mobile fleet from Cheyenne Mountain, her displays showing three-dimensional battle space that resembled a swarm of predators converging on slower prey. Human doctrine emphasizes maneuverability over armor. We can't take hits like they can, so we don't get hit. Enemy attempting to target our destroyers with guided munitions, a tactical officer reported. Countermeasures active. Deploy chaff and thermal decoys. Okonkwo watched Crythian missiles veer off course, chasing false signatures. All ships, execute pattern Thermopylae. The human fleet scattered into seemingly random vectors, then converged from multiple angles on isolated Crythian vessels. 3 destroyers would attack simultaneously from different axes, forcing the enemy to divide defensive fire. Before Crythian point defense could adapt, the human ships would disengage and reform around a new target. It was pack hunting translated into space warfare, and it devastated the invaders. Aboard the human destroyer Sheffield, Captain Maria Torres brought her ship screaming past a Crythian battlecruiser at knife-fighting range. All batteries, continuous fire. Railgun rounds hammered the battlecruiser's shields while fusion torpedoes searched for weak points in the defensive envelope. The enemy vessel returned fire, particle beams scorching Sheffield's ablative armor, but Torres had already initiated a chaotic tumble that sent her ship spinning away from the worst of the barrage. Hull breach, decks 3 and 4. Reactor at 78%, her XO shouted over the alarms. We're not dead yet. Torres locked fresh targets. Helm, bring us about. Weapons, prepare another firing pass. Captain, that battlecruiser is targeting us specifically. Good. Makes our job easier. Torres watched her tactical display as two other human destroyers, Melbourne and Pretoria, approached from the battlecruiser's blind spots. All ships, synchronized strike on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark. 3 destroyers fired simultaneously. The Crythian vessel's shields collapsed under the concentrated barrage, and follow-up railgun rounds tore through its hull. Secondary explosions rippled along its length before the reactor containment failed, adding another expanding debris cloud to Earth's orbital space. Veskrath witnessed his fleet's destruction with growing horror. These weren't primitive defenders making a desperate last stand. This was coordinated military doctrine executed by a species that had studied warfare for its entire existence. Every human tactic showed understanding of Crythian weaknesses, shield harmonics that could be disrupted, targeting systems that could be fooled, formations that created exploitable gaps. How long have they been preparing for this? He demanded. His science officer pulled up data streaming from their few remaining sensor platforms. Commander, I'm detecting weapon signatures that suggest these platforms were constructed over multiple decades. The diversity of systems indicates parallel development programs. They weren't just preparing. They built an entire military-industrial complex specifically designed to fight a technologically superior opponent. Impossible. They only achieved interstellar capability 80 years ago. No, Commander. They achieved interstellar travel 80 years ago. But they've been detecting our transmissions and studying our technology for over a century. They knew we were out here. The science officer's voice carried a note of unwilling respect. They've been preparing for us longer than most of our crew have been alive. On Earth, Major Reeves monitored the strategic situation with satisfaction. Enemy fleet down to 63 vessels. Our mobile units report minimal casualties. They're breaking. Chen nodded slowly. Time to show them what we've really been building. She activated fleet-wide communications. All stealth units, you are weapons free. Commence Operation Midnight. Across the battle space, human vessels that had been drifting silent and cold suddenly came alive. Not destroyers or cruisers, but something the Crythians hadn't encountered yet, stealth ships built with radar-absorbent hulls and heat suppression systems that rendered them effectively invisible until they fired. Each one carried nuclear-pumped warheads specifically designed for ship killing. Veskratha's flagship shuddered as something detonated less than 1,000 kilometers from his hull. Report. Stealth vessels. They're inside our defensive perimeter. The tactical officer's voice bordered on panic. We never detected their approach. They're launching missiles at point-blank range. Warheads detonated throughout the Crythian formation, the electromagnetic pulses and thermal radiation overwhelming shields designed to deflect energy attacks from predictable ranges. 3 dreadnoughts went dark, their systems fried by pulses that exceeded Council weapon specifications. 2 carriers suffered catastrophic failures as their fighter bays decompressed. A heavy cruiser simply disappeared in a flash of fusion fire. Chen's voice cut through the chaos. Fleet Commander, you've now lost 78% of your forces. Your remaining vessels are combat ineffective. I'm told your people value honor and strength. Is there honor in the senseless death of your remaining crew? Is there strength in refusing to acknowledge when you've been defeated? Veskrath stared at his tactical display. 41 ships remained functional from the 217 he'd brought to this cursed system. 41 ships against an enemy that had revealed new capabilities with every engagement, an enemy that had turned Earth's entire orbital space into a killing field. An enemy that had been waiting for this moment for nearly half a century. "Prepare to withdraw," he said quietly. "Commander?" "I said prepare to withdraw." "We cannot," he stopped, scales shifting to shame colors. "We cannot win this engagement." Before the retreat order could transmit, new contacts appeared on every sensor. Not from Earth's orbit, but from deeper in the system. Ships emerging from the asteroid belt, from Jupiter's orbit, from positions scattered across the solar system's outer reaches. Hundreds more vessels, these ones larger than anything the humans had deployed so far. Chen's image appeared again, and this time she was smiling. "Did you think Earth was our only fortress, Commander? We're a species that spreads. We build redundancy into everything. Those are our heavy defense platforms, built in the asteroid belt and the outer colonies. They were holding position in case you brought reinforcements." Her smile turned cold. "Since you didn't, they'll help finish this." Veskrath's claws trembled as he watched humanity's true fleet converge on his shattered forces. "How many ships do you have?" "Enough," Chen replied. "Always enough. We learned from Earth's history. When you face extinction, you don't build just enough to survive. You build enough to ensure the threat never returns." She leaned forward. "Withdraw now, Fleet Commander, or we'll ensure none of your vessels leave this system to warn your superiors what they'll face if they return." Veskrath's command console chimed with incoming data, tactical projections showing the converging human forces, probability matrices calculating his fleet's survival odds. Every algorithm returned the same result: 0% chance of victory, 12% chance of successful retreat if initiated immediately, dropping 3% every minute he delayed. "All vessels, emergency withdrawal," he transmitted across what remained of his fleet. "Maximum acceleration, scatter pattern Delta 7. Rendezvous at rally point beyond the heliopause." His ships began their retreat, damaged engines straining to build velocity. But the human fleet didn't pursue immediately. They simply adjusted positions, closing off escape vectors with the patience of predators who knew their prey was already doomed. "Commander, they're not following," his tactical officer said. "They're hurting us." Veskrath saw it then. The human formations weren't designed to destroy his fleeing ships. They were guiding the Krithian survivors toward a specific exit corridor, away from the inner planets, away from potential ambush positions. Giving them a path to run. Chen's voice returned one final time. "Your ships are free to leave, Fleet Commander. Return to your superiors. Tell them what happened here. Tell them Earth stands ready to defend itself against any threat. Tell them we've been preparing since the day we heard your first transmissions, and we'll keep preparing for the next threat, and the one after that." She paused. "And tell them if they want peace, we'll negotiate as equals. But if they want war, they've seen what that costs." The surviving Krithian vessels limped toward the system's edge, their retreat covered by weapons that could have annihilated them but chose mercy instead. Veskrath watched Earth recede on his displays, that blue-green world that had shattered his fleet with such casual efficiency. 41 ships, he said quietly. "We brought 217, and 41 survived. They destroyed us." His science officer worked at her station, compiling data that their government would need. "Commander, preliminary analysis suggests the humans deployed approximately 1,500 warships, 3,000 autonomous platforms, and weapon systems we still don't fully understand. Their industrial capacity exceeds our initial estimates by several orders of magnitude. How long until we reach the rally point? 18 hours at current velocity. Veskrath settled into his command chair, scales still flushed with shame. 18 hours to contemplate the magnitude of his failure. 18 hours to prepare the report that would forever mark him as the commander who underestimated humanity's resolve. Behind him, Earth's defenses maintained their vigilant watch, weapons still tracking the retreating fleet, ready to resume firing if the invaders changed course. Inside Cheyenne Mountain, Admiral Chen allowed herself a long breath. The adrenaline that had sustained her through the engagement was fading, replaced by bone-deep exhaustion and the weight of command decisions that had cost lives. "Casualty report," she said quietly. Major Reeves pulled up the data, his expression somber. Orbital Defense Station Alamo suffered critical damage. Total loss of crew, 41 personnel. Sheffield took heavy hits during the close engagement, 19 dead, 37 wounded. Melbourne reports 8 casualties. Across all forces, we're at 163 confirmed dead, 412 wounded, and we lost 9 autonomous platforms plus significant damage to Mars orbital infrastructure. Chen closed her eyes briefly. 163 defenders who'd never see another sunrise. Crews who'd trained their entire lives for this moment and paid the ultimate price. Notify next of kin. Full honors for the fallen. And make sure everyone understands, they saved Earth. Every single one of them. Yes, ma'am. Reeves hesitated. Admiral, we're receiving communications from across the system. Colony governors requesting status, civilian ships asking permission to return to normal operations, media outlets demanding statements. Tell the governors we'll maintain full alert for another 72 hours. Civilian traffic can resume once we've cleared the debris fields. Media can wait until I've written condolence letters to 163 families. She stood, her joints protesting after hours in the command chair. And Reeves? Send a message to all defense forces. They performed beyond expectations. Earth stands because they held the line. Lieutenant Okonkwo monitored the long-range sensors, tracking the Krithian retreat. Admiral, we're detecting transmissions from the enemy fleet. Looks like they're sending everything they recorded back to their home territory. Let them, Chen replied. We want the galaxy to know what happened here. We want every species considering aggression against humanity to understand the cost. She walked to the main display showing Earth in all its blue beauty. 43 years of preparation. Trillions of credits invested in weapons and defenses. Every government on Earth unified toward a single purpose. It was worth it. Park coordinated damage control on Thermopylae, his crew working frantically to seal hull breaches and restore critical systems. His station had taken 16 direct hits during the battle, but the redundant systems and over-engineered construction had kept them in the fight. Final count, Commander, his weapons officer reported. We destroyed or disabled 27 enemy vessels from this station alone. Ammunition expenditure at 78%. Power reserves at 41%. We can maintain operations, but we need resupply. Mark it as priority. Park looked through the observation port at the debris field surrounding Earth, shattered ships, spent munitions, and the expanding clouds of vaporized metal that had once been enemy vessels. We held. That's what matters. Across the system, similar scenes played out on every defense platform, every warship, every facility that had participated in humanity's first true test against an alien threat. Damage reports, casualty notifications, ammunition counts, and beneath it all, a unified understanding, they had won. Captain Torres brought Sheffield limping back toward lunar orbit, her destroyer scarred but intact. The bridge crew worked in exhausted silence, maintaining systems that had been pushed far beyond recommended limits. XO, how's our reactor holding up? Honestly, Captain? I have no idea how it's still running. We exceeded safety margins by 40% during that last engagement. Engineering says it'll need complete replacement before we see combat again. Torres managed a tired smile. Then we'll replace it. And we'll upgrade the weapons while we're at it. Next time someone threatens Earth, we'll be even more ready. The galaxy's communication networks carried the story with the speed of faster-than-light transmissions. Automated monitoring stations recorded the Crithian fleet's destruction and relayed the data to observation posts scattered across dozens star systems. Species that had considered Earth a primitive backwater revised their assessments with sudden urgency. In a command center 300 light-years from Sol, a Velan intelligence officer watched the battle recordings with mounting dread. Update the database. Earth System Classification, Omega-level threat. Recommend permanent exclusion from expansion planning. Her superior's tendrils coiled with anxiety. One species defeated a Crithian battle group. Not defeated. Annihilated. They destroyed 78% of the attacking force and let the survivors flee as a deliberate message. The intelligence officer highlighted segments of the battle data. They've weaponized everything. Their mining equipment, their power infrastructure, their entire industrial base serves dual military purposes. And they've been preparing for decades. Mark Sol system as restricted. Any vessel approaching human territory requires executive authorization. The superior's colors shifted to respectful caution. And recommend we open diplomatic channels. If they're this dangerous as potential enemies, perhaps we should ensure they become allies instead. Admiral Chen stood in Cheyenne Mountain's observation deck, watching the sun set over the Colorado Mountains. Somewhere above her, defense satellites maintained their eternal watch. In orbit, her fleet conducted post-battle operations. Across the solar system, humanity's weapons remained ready. Her communicator chimed. Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Crithian government. They're requesting a ceasefire and preliminary negotiations. Tell them we'll consider negotiations after they withdraw all forces beyond the heliopause and formally recognize human sovereignty over Sol system. Chen's reflection stared back from the armored glass. And make it clear, we negotiate as equals, or we don't negotiate at all. Understood, Admiral. One more thing, we're detecting communication traffic from at least 30 alien species. Seems like everyone suddenly wants to talk to us. Schedule preliminary discussions for next week. Right now, I need to write those letters to the families. She turned from the window, the weight of command settling back onto her shoulders. And get me a secure line to the Joint Chiefs. We won this battle, but the war for humanity's place in the galaxy is just beginning. 43 years of preparation had given Earth the tools to survive first contact. The battle had proven humanity could stand against any threat. But Chen understood the deeper victory. Respect purchased in blood and steel, a reputation forged in the fires of orbital combat. Earth had sent its message to the galaxy. The species from the Death World wasn't prey. They were predators who'd evolved under a harsh sun on a planet that tested every generation. They'd survived ice ages and extinction events, built civilizations from stone and fire, split the atom and touched the stars. And now the galaxy knew, humanity didn't seek war, but they'd spent half a century preparing for it anyway. They'd turned their entire solar system into a fortress, armed their colonies, and built weapons that made Council technology look obsolete. The Crithians came expecting easy conquest. They left shattered, their survivors carrying a warning that would echo across the stars. Chen walked back to her command center, past memorial walls already being prepared for the fallen, past crews working to repair and rebuild, past soldiers who'd proven that Earth would never surrender. The message had been sent. The galaxy had been warned. Earth doesn't start wars. But humanity damn sure knows how to finish them.